Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Zane, who I've known for many years, asked me to take this class. And inshallah, in this class, I want to go through just a background to the main personality behind one of the largest schools of jurisprudence we have in the world, which is the Hanafi school. And obviously, its founder is Abu Hanifa. And so he wanted me to just expose you guys to this personality who is one of the, you know, main figures of Islamic history. Like if you look at Islamic scholarship, obviously there's been many scholars over the years, but on a daily basis, people like Shafi'i, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, these people are people who we mention on a daily basis, which is quite incredible if you think, because they lived a long, long time ago, yet they're still relevant today. So these are big personalities, people we should definitely know about and know more than just some sort of superficial information. So this is the intention, inshallah, today. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that screen? Just let me know if you can.
Yes, Sheikh, we can see the screen.
Okay, okay. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to give a short presentation and then we'll have Q&A. I know that Maghrib is about 6:17, so I'll try to wrap up before then, inshallah ta'ala. So, Imam Abu Hanifa. So, Abu Hanifa is actually not his real name, it's his kunya. So, as you know, you may have a name Khalid or something, but people call you Abu Yusuf because your son is Yusuf. So, this is his kunya, Abu Hanifa. So, who is this man? Who is Abu Hanifa? Um, his grandfather was a Persian, right? So, Abu Hanifa is not an Arab from lineage. He is a Persian Pharisee, which is interesting, isn't it? Because, again, in fact, if you look at the six books of Hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasa'i, Majah, all of them are non-Arabs. All of them are non-Arabs, apart from Imam Muslim, right? So, as you know, Bukhari was from Bukhara, right? Not in Arab land, but yet these are um, huge figures in our tradition. We rely on them for the tradition. So Abu Hanifa himself is not actually an Arab. He's actually from Persian background. His grandfather had become Muslim and had moved to Kufa, where he met Imam Ali radiallahu anhu. So Imam Ali was the fourth Khalifa, and he moved his capital to Iraq, right? Kufa is in Iraq. And so his grandfather has actually met Imam Ali, right? So this shows you how close Abu Hanifa is to the original source. He then has a son called Thabit. So his grandfather has a son called Thabit, who also lives at the time of Imam Ali, radiallahu anhu. And it's narrated that he made a dua for Thabit to be blessed with pious offspring. So Imam Ali makes dua for Thabit to have pious offspring. And obviously we believe that that dua was manifested in the coming of Abu Hanifa. So then Thabit has a son, and that is Nu'man ibn Thabit. So Nu'man is actually the name of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa is Nu'man, and he's the son of Thabit, but we refer to him as Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa. So Imam Abu Hanifa's early days, right? The first thing to note is how early he is to the first generation. He's born in 80 after Hijrah, which means that that's only 70 years. It's only 70 years between the Prophet passing away to um, the time of Abu Hanifa being born, and only about 20 years after the martyrdom of Sayyidina Hussein, right? So again, very close to the early time. There's a discussion over whether he actually met any companions or not, right? So there is a disagreement whether he met companions or not. So you have the first generation, you have your companions, right, as-Sahaba, and then you have at-Tabi'un, who are the people who took from the Sahaba, like Sayyid ibn Musayyib, Hassan al-Basri, these types, right? So they're followers. So, for example, Awais al-Qarni, who lived at the time of the Prophet but never met the Prophet ﷺ, is not considered to be a companion. He's a follower because he met companions. So the companions and then the next generation, in other words, the people who took for them are called followers, tabi'un. And then you have the next generation, it's called tabi'un. And as you know, there's hadith about the first three generations. These are what we call the Salaf. When we refer to the Salaf, we're talking about the first three generations, right? The Sahaba, Tabi'un, Tabi'un. So Abu Hanifa, he's either in the second or third. So he's a tabi'i, which means he met a companion, and the companion that he's most likely to have met is Anas ibn Malik, who died after 100 Hijrah, right? So Anas ibn Malik was a child at the time of Prophet ﷺ, and he's one of the ones that lived the longest. He was like 100 when he died. So it is believed he met Anas bin Malik, which would make him a tabi'un. And even if we say he didn't meet Anas ibn Malik, then we would say he's a tabi'un, or tabi'in, right? So, which means he is still from the Salaf. He is regarded from the generation of what we'd call the Salaf, um, the early generations. So, like the practice of many pious families at that time, he memorizes the Quran and was known to recite the Quran a lot throughout his life. So he was very connected to the Quran. He used to recite the Quran at night. There's many stories about him doing multiple khatams in Ramadan over and over again. So he was very much connected to the Quran. And like his father, he became a silk trader and was known for his honesty in trading. So he actually starts off life as a businessman. Um, and this is actually quite interesting because obviously when you are engaged in a trade, then you understand the ins and outs of it. And so they actually say the Hanafi school, when it comes to buying and selling, the chapters on buying and selling, is very pragmatic, it's very practical, right? It's very pragmatic, it's very practical. Like for example, Shafi school is quite stringent. Like you'd have to say, I'm buying this pen, and you have to say I have accepted this pen for, whatever, £10 or whatever it is. So they're they're a bit more stringent. Whereas the Hanafi said, like the way in Asda, when you go to Asda, there's no conversation between you and the cashier. You're not saying I'm buying these bunch of bananas. They just go beep, 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 right? You're just passing it, and they're just kind of taking money from you. So it's called kind of exchange. So the Hanafi said this is fine. This is buying and selling. This is what people do. They don't have to necessarily, say the actual words. So this is coming from his experience of life as a businessman. So he's out and about in life. He's not a hermit. He's not just somebody sitting in a library and reading books. No, he is engaging with society. He's part and parcel. He's seeing life for what it is, which makes him then very pragmatic when it comes to his jurisprudence. He looks at things very, very practically. So it's interesting to look at Iraq at the time. So what's happening in Iraq at the time? So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had been sent to Iraq by Umar radiallahu anhu to teach the people their religion. So if you um, know your seerah, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one of the earliest converts, right? He's one of the earliest, and he he said, I took 70 surahs, chapters of the Quran, directly from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ. I memorized them directly from the Prophet ﷺ. So he was known for his understanding of the Quran. He was a very knowledgeable companion. So obviously Omar, right? This is a big civilization, Iraq. He needs to send somebody who's like solid, somebody very, very grounded, very knowledgeable, that can be, in charge of teaching the religion properly. So he sends Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. All the people could have chosen, he sends Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Then later on, like I said, when Imam Ali becomes the fourth Khalifa, he moves his capital to Iraq. So Abu Hanifa's school takes a lot of its understanding from the understanding of these two main companions. Alhamdulillah. So at the time, Iraq has got many different sects. You can think of Iraq as a cosmopolitan place where there's a lot of different, people passing through, and because of that, you got different sects. So Abu Hanifa is exposed to all these different thoughts and different sects. You've got the Shia going on there, um, you know, and then you got the Khawarij, who were the people who disagreed with Imam Ali, and the incident with Muawiyah that has him abdicating from being the Khalifa. So they were like the first extremists. I'm sure Sheikh Zane's probably talked about them, or he will talk about them. So the Khawarij were the first extremists, very black and white. Anyone, they would do takfir, they would call other people non-Muslims, or disbelievers. Then you have the Mu'tazilites, which are, you could translate as the rationalists, who relied on their intellect more than they would rely on the text. So they'd reject texts which to them didn't make sense. So these are all sects which are prevalent in Iraq. So Abu Hanifa's very well aware of all the different arguments, right? He's very well aware. That's why his Aqidah, he's very aware of the different sects and what we should be believing and shouldn't be believing. So then, how is this path to knowledge? Well, one day he meets a scholar called Sha'bi. Sha'bi is a very no, well-known hadith scholar who was famous, and he meets Abu Hanifa, and he asks Abu Hanifa. He sees that this boy's got a lot of potential. Abu Hanifa's about 15 at this point. He's a teenager. He's got a lot of potential. And he asks him, look, who are you studying with? What are you doing? Just inquiring about him. And when he sees that he's not really studying formally, Sha'bi encourages him to go and seek knowledge, and says, look, go and seek knowledge, because he can see that this boy has got a lot of potential. So Abu Hanifa starts his studies. So this is also interesting, because although he had memorized Quran, he started his, you could say, his formal studies a little bit later than others would have started. Like Shafi'i, was studying from a very early age. Abu Hanifa starts a bit later. So he plunges himself into seeking knowledge, but he also continues his business on the side, right? So he's now kind of gone part-time in his business, still overseeing that, but now his focus has become knowledge and seeking knowledge. This is his path now. So who are his teachers? He was asked, "Oh Nu'man," because Nu'man is his name, remember, it's not Abu Hanifa. "Who did you take your knowledge from?" He replied, "From the companions of Umar, who took from Umar, from the companions of Ali, who took from Ali, and from the companions of Abdullah, I Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who took from Abdullah." In other words, I took from their students. So these are the great companions, but I have taken from their students. So in other words, I'm taking the knowledge from them. Um, so he studies like you would do at that time with all the great scholars of Kufa, but there's one particular scholar who he takes. You could say he's his principal scholar or his main teacher, and that is Hamad ibn Abi Yusuf, Abu Sulaiman Afwan, right? Hamad. So you refer to Hamad quite a lot in his, um, sayings. So Hamad had taken from Al-Qama, who had taken from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So again, this shows you the chain, very, very close to the original sources. He also spends time seeking knowledge in Mecca and Medina. So what scholars would do at that time, would be that they would go to do Hajj. And when you go to do Hajj, it's not like now you get in a plane and you go for 2 weeks and live in five-star hotels and have buffet breakfasts, right? That time, you were traveling by horse, you were traveling by camel. This would be months and months of journey time. So you're not going to just go there and just stay 2 weeks and leave. You're going to now take the opportunity to make it a proper once in a lifetime journey. So they would have went there and spent a lot of time, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe even more before they venture back. So they would then take that opportunity to seek knowledge from the scholars in Makkah and Medina. And so this is what he does. And then when he's in Makkah and Medina, he benefits from the students of Ibn Abbas. Who's Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas is the son of Abbas. Who is Abbas? Abbas is the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet had four uncles, right, alive when he was there. Two became Muslim, two didn't. So you have Hamza, who was martyred in the Battle of Uhud. That was the most beloved of his uncles to, well, one of the beloved ones to the Prophet ﷺ. Then you have Abbas, who actually became Muslim very late. He became Muslim at the end, towards the end of the era. Then you have the other two uncles which didn't become Muslim, Abu Talib, as you know, his protector, and then the Abu Lahab, who is the worst of them all. So Ibn Abbas is the son of Abbas. So he's a relative of the Prophet ﷺ. He's a cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, but he's also very knowledgeable of the Quran. The Prophet made specific dua for Ibn Abbas to be given understanding of the Quran. And so when it comes to tafsir, this is important for you guys to know. If you ever come across the opinion of Ibn Abbas in tafsir, it carries a lot of weight. Okay, it carries a lot of weight. So Ibn Abbas, so he takes this from the students of Ibn Abbas. So now he's getting, deep knowledge of the Quran, right? And he even sat in the circles of Imam Malik. So the question is, did Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik meet? Yes, they did. When he went to Medina, he met with Imam Malik. Even though Imam Malik's 13 years younger than him, he still sits and engages and they take knowledge from one another. So when did he become when did he move into the role of the teacher? Around about the age of 40. So from about 15 to 40, it's a 25-year period. He's learning, he's still trading. And then in 120 after Hijrah, his teacher dies and he kind of steps up and becomes the main teacher. And this is where his main teaching begins with his students, right? So for about 30 years, he's going to teach. So at the age of 40, he's going to die at the age of 70. So it's 30-year period where this is the development of the school now going to happen. So what differentiated Abu Hanifa from everybody else at that time is his style of teaching. His style of teaching was not just Q&A. Okay, Imam Malik, for example, is known that he didn't like hypothetical questions. If you asked him a question, it didn't happen, he was very cautious. He said, look, has it happened? If it's not happened, don't ask me. Right? Abu Hanifa was not like that. Abu Hanifa would actually like his students to get involved in a discussion. So if this was an Abu Hanifa class, he'd be throwing questions, scenarios, what's your opinion, what's your opinion, and everyone's discussing it. And he's developing their analytical skills, he's developing their, sharpening their intellects. And so he would often propose hypothetical questions. And this is important because there are questions which they discussed at their time, which didn't happen. But the later scholars use those principles for new rulings. So, for example, they discussed what would a man do if he's in the air and he has to pray, right? They couldn't have imagined at that time that there'd be people flying in planes now, but we do, right? But they were discussing these type of questions. They were discussing things which hadn't happened. And this is one of the hallmarks of Abu Hanifa, right? This is one of the hallmarks. He invited discussion. He liked people to disagree with him, and he would discuss and argue back with them. Um, so his style of teaching strengthened the students' faculty of thought and reasoning, right? This was obviously what he was trying to do anyway. So he was very intelligent. Abu Hanifa is known for his very, very quick intellect, right? Very quick intellect. So the Khawarij, as I mentioned before, they were an extremist group who very black and white. And they wanted, they challenged him. So he gets challenged with them. And first of all, he asked him, "Are you going to kill me? If I disagree with you, you're going to kill me?" They said no. Okay, he goes, "Okay, fine," because this is a kind of crazy people they were. Then he says, "Okay, fine. Um, who's going to argue with me?" And they put someone forward. They said, "Fine." He goes, "What are we going to do if we can't agree? Who's going to decide who's got the stronger argument?" They said, "Okay, we'll appoint somebody." As soon as they appointed someone, he'd won the debate because their problem was that when Sayyidina Ali and Muawiyah, when they had their big disagreement, right? Muawiyah wouldn't recognize Imam Ali as the Khalifa, and obviously Imam Ali is not going to um, recognize Muawiyah. They had a stalemate and they were about to go to war. So they basically did arbitration, right? They tried to negotiate. This is what the problem with the Khawarij was. The Khawarij didn't like this. This is politics. This is not religion, right? So they've got a big problem with arbitration. So when Abu Hanifa said that, well, who's going to judge between the debate if we are arguing? They said, we'll appoint somebody. He said, that's the whole point. You've just proved my point that if there's a disagreement, you need somebody to mediate or to be an arbitrator. How are you going to come to a decision otherwise? He's also known to have turned down the post of Grand Qadi. So he could have been like the Chief Justice, you could say, right? The main judge of the land, of the judiciary, right? He would be the main guy. And that also shows his sincerity because he's not after post, he's not after money. So when Mansour gets annoyed with him because when he says, I want you to be the Grand Qadi, Abu Hanifa says, I'm not fit for the post. And Mansour says, you're a liar, right? Because you're the most knowledgeable person we know. And so he's so quick, he says, okay, well, you've just proved my point because a liar can't be a Qadi. You can't have a liar being the Qadi, right? So he was too fast, he was too quick for people. And obviously, when you're like that, people don't like you, get jealous of you quickly. So then he continues to trade to ensure those in power could not influence his rulings. So because he's independent, because he's got a business, he's got money, he's not he's not at the behest of the government or anybody, right? This is one of the problems of our time, is that so one of the things that the colonialists did about 200 years ago when the colonial powers took over Muslim lands, one of the things they did, which has had lasting effects on our ummah, is that they took away the endowments. So what are the endowments? Al-Qaf. So all of these main universities, you look at Harvard, whatever they are, they're all based on endowments. People leave money, they invest that money, and then that money basically runs the organization, right? So there was lots of endowments at the time before the colonialists came along, and these endowments were there so that scholars would have a wage, would be able to dedicate themselves to learning, and they would get a wage independent of the government, so that they can make a fatwa against the government if they wanted. They were an independent body, and they were there was two kind of power bases in the ummah, in the country: the political leaders and the religious leaders, right? And there was always this kind of checking of power because the political leaders could only get away with so much because the religious leaders could pull them up and say, listen, you better behave yourself, otherwise they had power basically. When you take that away, when you take the endowments away and there's no longer the scholars have any power or their independence is gone and they're relying, like let's say, on the state for them to fund the university or whatever, then there's a shift of balance. And so some people actually believe this is one of the reasons we ended up with dictatorship or what contributed to dictatorship because um there's no longer this other power base to check them and keep them in balance. Um and governments do that. Governments tend to try to use scholars to prop up their positions. So he's known for his piety and honesty in trading. Once his assistant sold silk and forgot to inform the customer of a defect. So Abu Hanifa refused to accept the profit and he gave it away in charity, right? He was very, very honest, even if it meant, loss in earnings for him. And obviously that shows you his character because knowledge is one thing, but if there's no character, then it's not going to go very far. And if you look at all four Imams, not only did they have knowledge, they also had good character. Not only that, so because remember he's a businessman, he's got money, he subsidized his students as well. So other people who were maybe less fortunate couldn't dedicate the time to studying because they had to earn a living. He would say to them, "Look, come and learn, and I will give you the money." So he was not only just teaching and all that stuff. He was also enabling other people to become scholars. So he's a massive, massive figure at his time. So, like I said, he had very good character. So there's an instant where he's sitting in the mosque and a man comes and starts to abuse him. So he's cursing him, he's doing all sorts of stuff. Abu Hanifa just remains quiet. Abu Hanifa gets up and starts to walk home. The man follows him and he's still cursing him. When he gets to the door of the house, Abu Hanifa turns around and says, "Brother, I'm entering my house and you'll not be able to get in. Please abuse me to your heart's content before I step in." In other words, get it out of your system. So whatever you want to say to me, just finish it before I go in, right? So that there's nothing left in your heart. And at that point, the man actually became embarrassed and went silent and went away. He also was good to his neighbors. So he was known to have this neighbor who was a drunk, right? So Abu Hanifa has got a neighbor who's a drunk. Um, so this is a Muslim, but he was in our time. It would be like one of those annoying neighbors that has parties at night time, blasts the music, doesn't pay attention to your rights. You knock on the door and say, "Look, can you be quiet?" Yeah, yeah. 2 minutes later, the music's up. So he's got people coming around. They're drinking alcohol. They're having parties. So Abu Hanifa's used to this man, be a bit of a nuisance. So every night this is his routine, and then one night he can't hear anything. So next day Abu Hanifa comes out and says, what's happened to this guy? I didn't hear him last night. And they said, "Oh, the police was passing by and they arrested him." So he goes down to the prison. And remember, Abu Hanifa is known in society. He's like a big figure. When they see him, they're like, "Oh, why are you here and this and that?" He goes, "Look, my neighbor's in prison. I'd like you to release him. I will vouch for him, etc., etc." So he intercedes for his drunk neighbor, and the neighbor is let go because of Abu Hanifa. So the drunk neighbor says, like I annoy you, I bug you, and he also used to have a bad opinion of scholars. The neighbor used to say these scholars are a waste of time, etc. He goes, "Look, you know, take me out of prison? It's better for you if I'm in prison. And no one's bugging you." And he gives him a bit of poetry, and then the poetry basically says that we don't lay waste to those who have rights on us. And he goes, "Did I lay you waste? Did I let you go? Did I forget about you?" And he goes, "No." And he actually then repents. So the drunk neighbor repents because of Abu Hanifa, and then actually becomes one of his students. So his kind of routine later in life would be he'd pray Fajr prayers, then he'd have classes, and he'd answer questions which came from afar. After Dhuhr, he would go home and rest until Asr, his resting time. They say that he used to only sleep a few hours at night time, so he used to rest between Dhuhr and Asr. After us, he'd teach again, then he'd go around the city, visiting, checking on the sick, helping the poor. And then his final session was between Maghrib and Isha. After Isha, he'd engage in prayers often throughout the night. His methodology, so now when it comes to his methodology, all the schools have similar methodology in that they all derive the rulings from Quran and Sunnah and Ijma. Ijma is consensus of scholars. These three they all agree on. After that, they vary with how much emphasis they put on different sources of Islamic law. So you got Quran, Sunnah, everyone knows that. Statements of the companions is also quite big in his methodology. Consensus, like I said, so all the main scholars agree at one point. Analogy is quite strong in his school. So qiyas. So if there's something which is not known, but there's something else which is known, and we know the ruling on it, then you do analogy on it. Juristic preference as well, and custom orf was very strong for him as well. His legacy. So Imam Shafi'i is known to have said about him, all people are dependent on Abu Hanifa in fiqh. الناس عيال على أبي حنيفة في الفقه على أبي حنيفة الناس عيال في الفقه على أبي حنيفة. And the Hanafis remind the Shafis of this statement. His main students are Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Shaybani, um, both of whom are known as Sheikhan. No, actually, that's not correct. It should be Sahiban. That should read Sahiban. Zufar is also one of his students, main students, and also Hassan bin Ziyad. But the two main ones are Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Shaybani. Abu Yusuf then goes on to become the Grand Qadi at his time, in the time of Harun al-Rashid. And al-Shaybani also teaches Shafi'i. So Imam Shafi'i studied from Imam Malik and he studied from Muhammad Shaybani. So he actually got exposed to the Hanafi school and the Maliki school. And his school, the Hanafi school, then goes on to become the largest amongst all the Ummah. So from all the four schools, if you had to do a tally of numbers, percentage, the Hanafis are the largest. This is a map that gives you an idea of the Hanafi school where it is, and you can see that the different schools are predominant geographically in different locations. So the green is the Hanafis. Well, you can see obviously India there, and India has got 1 billion people today. Obviously, they're not all Muslims, Hindus, but you still got about 200 or something million Muslims, just as many Muslims as in Pakistan. So just India, Pakistan is about 400 million. And then you got Bangladesh, which is another 150 million or 200. So you got about 600 million already there. Then you've got Afghanistan, you've got all the former Russian states, Dagestan and so on. And then also Turkey. Turkey's Hanafi. Um, and large parts of Syria are also Hanafi. The Shafi'i is, um, as you can see, in Malaysia, Indonesia, uh, Singapore, all of that is Shafi'i. Large parts of the kind of east coast of Africa, I've got Shafi'i, but they also have Malikis as well. Yemen is Shafi'i. And then you've got the blue, which is the Maliki, that's all North Africa. Your Morocco, your Tunisia, your Algeria, large parts of Egypt, Mali, Gambia, all of those countries, they're all Malikis, right? They're all Malikis. And then you can see Iran there in orange because they're Jafaris, the Shia, and then the blue is Zaydis. You can see that's in Yemen there. So the Houthis that you hear about in the news, the Houthis, they are from the Zaydi school of thought, Zaydi school of Shia thought, but the Zaydis are different from the Shia in Iran. The Zaydis are actually the closest to the Ahl Sunnah. So they're very, very close to the Ahl Sunnah. There's not much disagreement between us and them. And in the actual prayer and things like that, they look very similar to the way the Hanafis pray. And then you got Ibadi, which is in Oman, which um, in terms of their belief system are similar in some senses to the Khawarij. In terms of the Khawarij Aqidah, the Ibadis have got much of the Khawarij Aqidah. They're not extreme, but in terms of their belief system. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the impact of the Hanafi school from that time until our time. Then you obviously got some of the European countries there, Bulgaria and all those little kind of smaller, Bosnia and so on. They're all Hanafis. So his last days, Abu Hanifa is poisoned and he dies in Sajda. Can you imagine that? He dies in Sajda. What a better place to go. Sajda and dies out of poisoned out of envy. So, inshallah, he's a shaheed. 50,000 people prayed his funeral prayer. He was buried in Baghdad. You got to think 50,000 people at that time, right? 50,000 people at that time is a huge number. You can imagine if you go out and there's 1,000 people praying janazah, how big is that in a mosque? A big mosque would be full, 50,000, 50 of them. And he leaves only one son, which is he called Hamad, probably because of after his teacher, who then also becomes a scholar as well. And he dies in the year 150 Hijrah at the age of 70. Very interestingly, it is the same year Imam Shafi is born. So it's like almost like one great goes and another great comes. So he dies in 150 and Shafi'i is born in 150. So Shafi'i never meets Abu Hanifa, but he takes knowledge from his student, Muhammad al-Shaybani. So Shafi'i's taking from Imam Malik and Muhammad Shaybani. And then you have Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who is the teacher, who is the student of Imam Shafi'i. So they're all connected in one way or another to one another. And this was, we've finished the presentation. This was just something that Sheikh Zain had asked me to share with you all. The first is, before you say, do this is a online program I have. My specialization's in Islamic family law, and I deal with a lot of kind of marital issues. So I have a online program for single Muslims. So most of you will be single. And if you're interested in that program, you can visit my website, amerjamil.com, and there's a discount code, ISOC25, which will give you a 25% discount if you are interested in that. The other thing he wanted me to make everyone aware is I run another course. It's a 1 year online Islamic Studies diploma, and we've just started the year called iSyllabus. If you're interested in doing that course, there's a student a special student discount. So if you're interested in using that, then you'd use the coupon live ISOC 225 and you'll get the course for 225 if that's something you're interested in, inshallah ta'ala. So that's www.isyllabus.org. So that's me done. I know it's about probably 5 minutes till Maghrib. We'll take some questions if there's a need. I can come back after Maghrib as well if you guys have got questions. So I'm going to leave it to you guys if there's any questions on what we've been talking about.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We've got about 5 minutes till Maghrib, inshallah. So, as Sheikh said, if there are any questions, then he can take some now, inshallah, before we pray Maghrib. And then afterwards, again, if anyone has questions that they still like to ask, there will be a little bit of time, inshallah. But if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll pass you the mic, inshallah. We can start with the sisters first. If any of the sisters have questions, inshallah, that you've got a microphone on your side. Bismillah. Nothing from the sisters? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So,
I'm Sheikh Jazakumullah Khairan. The other time when you were talking about Iraq, so on the presentation, there are some sects you listed. So you talked about Shia, the Khawarij, and the Mu'tazila. So I want to understand something. Now, these three sects, I want to know, are we going to categorize them together? Because I do know that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he was talking about the Khawarij in one of the hadiths, he said that they will be reading the Quran, but it will not go past. It will not go past here. يقرؤون القرآن لا تجوزه تراخيرهم. So I want to know: are we going to categorize them? Are they in the same? Are they all misguided, or are they? How are we going to categorize them? Jazakumullah khair.
yeah, I think what the common thread between all three of them is that they're not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they're not considered to be Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So, like for example, the Shia, they're not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Khawarij, they're not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Mu'tazilites, they're not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So, in terms of Aqidah, we have fundamental disagreements with them. I don't think we would go as far as saying that they're kuffar, Um, there's what we'd say is that there's fisq in their aqidah, all three of them. And the Shia, then, we get into different sects because the Shia are not just one, it's a banner under which there are many different sects. So like I said, the Zaydis are not like the Ithna Ashariya, which are in Iran. They're not the same. The Zaydis do not curse the Sahaba. Zaydis do not say the Sahaba are kuffar. And like we don't really have a huge problem with the Zaydis. Then you start getting into problems with other people who obviously curse Sahaba. And scholars differ whether that is kufr or whether it's fisq. So that's, another category. Then you have ones which have gone off the rails, which we don't consider to be Muslim, like the Ismaili Shia, or the Batiniya, because they don't believe, they believe everything's got a hidden meaning. So everything in the Quran, they'll interpret it not on the literal meaning, that's something else. They don't pray and things like that. So, uh, so this is not an Aqidah class, so we can't go into a big, huge discussion in terms of what each one believes and so on. But I'll leave that to you guys to, look into for yourselves. I don't know if you covered that with Sheikh Zane, but you should be aware of these kind of names and what the kind of main beliefs are. We do cover it in the iSyllabus course, their main kind of beliefs in our kind of creed classes. But if not, then you'd need to study a bit more creed, or maybe even just ask Sheikh Zain to explain these main ones and their main kind of beliefs and how they differ from Ahl Sunnah.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Any other questions before we pray Maghrib? And any from the sisters?
I just wanted to ask, like, what is the wisdom behind like another Imam emerging when one dies, like Imam Al-Shafi, and why does it not happen anymore?
Um, in terms of the wisdom, uh, the religion is, going to be passed on from generation to generation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously is going to have certain people in every generation who will learn and then teach it and pass it on. So I guess that was my point when I was saying that Abu Hanifa died that year. And it's very interesting how Imam Shafi is born. And then obviously we know who Imam Shafi goes on to become. So I think that there's great scholars in every generation. And we have our own scholars of our time, who then pass away, and then new ones emerge, that to take their place, and then they will pass away, and then new people will emerge. So this is an ongoing cycle of transmission, which I think keeps happening through Islamic history.
Jazakallah khair. If that's all the questions from today's session, then inshallah we'll bring it to a wrap. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Amer, again for all your time and the knowledge that you've been able to impart on us today. May Allah bless you for that, and may Allah grant you the tawfiq to continue teaching students and grant you success with your various courses and your foundation that you run. May Allah bless you for the time that you've given to us today.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. I hope all the best for you guys, inshallah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.